Hello and welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Stephanie Rivers. Welcome to the conversation. Come on in, kings and queens, as we welcome you to another simulcast. I am broadcasting on my YouTube page, on Facebook Live, and Twitter and LinkedIn. As a matter of fact, I'm adding new platforms, adding new subscribers. So I want to thank you to my new subscribers. And I know I'm touching some hot buttons for a lot of people because I'm getting emails from people and getting a lot of feedback. And I'm going to have to start watching the live chat closer because I'm getting people commenting and I'm busy doing other things. But at any rate, we want to welcome you to the conversation. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. And if this is your third or fifth or 50th, we want to welcome you back to the conversation. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you will be the first to know. You're watching my journal. I'm Steffanie Rivers. And also got some neat background music. I'll turn that background music down because I always try to set the mood before we get started. But here's what we're going to talk about today. Now, if you have had to pay for gas or you've had to pay for groceries or other essential items in the past few months, you know that the cost to be the boss in your household is getting more expensive. Gas costs more than $5 a gallon in California, and new vehicles are getting more expensive as well. I just went to the State Fair of Texas that's in Dallas every year about this time. They had some new vehicles on display, and those vehicles were so expensive they didn't even show you the price tag. Now, you know, when a seller doesn't want to show you the price tag of that thing, that means it's too expensive. And so, yeah, they want you to focus on the sizzle and not the steak. They showed you all the amenities and what it could do, but they didn't want to tell you how much you have to pay to make it do what it does. So there are lots of reasons why the cost of living is going up. Some people say it's COVID, the effects of COVID, the after effects of COVID. Some people say it's just the supply and demand chain of events. Others blame it on not having enough employees to, especially in the transportation chain, to make everything flow smoothly. But those are things that we cannot control. So today we're going to talk about things that we can control. How can you insulate yourself and your household to have a less stressful impact, so that it has a less stressful impact on you and your family, this rising cost of consumer goods? So maybe, perhaps, going through this, you can emerge as a better, more healthy, and more prepared person in the long run. Now, when it comes to shortages, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just stock up on stuff? Because when I was growing up, I forgot the name of this company, but and they probably have all these companies all over. But my mother used to actually buy, like, we had that big old freezer in the other room, big freezer. She would fill it full of meat, and you could just go in there throughout the winter and pull out whatever you wanted. So we didn't really have to worry about a shortage because we had stocked up. So some people say stock up on meat and toilet tissue. But I have a guest here today who probably would tell you to um, reduce your consumption of meat. Therefore, you would need less toilet tissue on the other end. So that's the best way to say that. So We will join, we'll have the guests join us later on. But before we get there, I'm going to show you my new opener. Stand by. Hi, I'm Stephanie Rivers, and I want justice for Breonna Taylor because the police officers involved showed reckless disregard for her life and the lives of her neighbors. Her. So you're saying she essentially died on the floor right there?
Second that she got shot, she was.
Family, did the city of Birmingham, did anybody say, did the church, did anybody say there's more to? Hello and welcome back. That was my new show opener, and we have our guest today. He is Martin Burrell, and Martin, welcome to the show. Just want to tell our viewers a little bit about you. Essentially, you stopped eating meat about 40 years ago, and you rarely eat animal products, so you consider yourself to be a vegetarian, yes?
That's correct. And I don't eat animal products. Not rarely, but I don't eat animal products.
So okay, so no meat, no animal products. That would be for people who are thinking, what does that mean? That would be no eggs, no cheese, no yogurt, things like that?
Well, I should say this. My rule is that I don't eat anything that has a will to live and will run from you.
Okay. All right. So yogurt is okay then, because that's not running from you. But I get it. And I will say this, I won't ask you to share your age. That would be up to you. But you put most people to shame who are your age because of your fitness and your diet and just how you handle yourself and your lifestyle. So welcome to the show, Martin Burrell. Now you're in Louisiana, but you live in Texas now, correct?
Yeah, correct. Uh-huh.
Okay, so now growing up, if you made this decision to go meatless 40 years ago, what was it? Louisiana is known as the Cajun state with the meals and the crawfish and the seafood. How could you decide? What made you decide to forego all of that for a different type of dietary choice?
Well, as you mentioned, it's been more than 45 years since I decided to become a vegetarian. And of course, at the time, I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that for me, it was easier. I worked in a grocery store and in the produce section of a grocery store when I was in high school. And I just really began to just really enjoy the fruits and vegetables that I was having to, keep on the shelves and things. And so it really, it just became, kind of like a more preferred thing to do. And then as I began to understand how my body felt and all of the, just the way that things were, then I, began to read and hear more about it. I read Dick Gregory's book, Cooking with Mother Nature. Dick Gregory, comedian, activist, and one of the things that he had said in his book was, that the things we consume really determine all the things about us. And he was advocating, or he advocated in this book, nutrition. He said he was like 300 pounds. He was smoking and eating everything you can think of. And then he began to make the transition and discovered that, hey, this was the best way to go. So that's kind of how this all started. And then as I began to really understand how important it was to the well-being, of your body and seeing other people around me suffering, older people who were older at that time who were having trouble. They were 50 years old and they were having trouble with high blood pressure, all kinds of things, on dialysis and all. And I just began to wonder, why is this? Why are their bodies failing so early? And and most people, you saw a lot of obesity and things of that nature. So I just began to make the transition. But when I really made the transition is when I started teaching high school. I graduated from college, came to Dallas to teach high school, and discovered many of the kids who I was teaching were coming to school high, not high on drugs, but high on sugar. They were just hyperactive. I mean, they would just, they come with a honey bun in one hand and a Coke in the other hand. That was breakfast. And so I just say, hey, guys, something got to be wrong with this. I couldn't get them to sit still in class. And then when they did sit still, they were back there asleep. So I began really, really just like, hey, what is going on here? And then discovered that there was a connection between what they were consuming and how they were able to have attentiveness and discipline within the classroom. And so that's how all this started.
So if it's as easy as reading a book and making the choice to change your habits, why do you think so many people? Because I'm sure if it was a book by Dick Gregory, it was a bestseller. A lot of
Yeah.
people knew about Dick Gregory and followed his teachings. Why do you think it's so hard for people to make the decision to forego meat or to exercise or to eat more vegetables and all those things that we know are better for us?
Well, I think it has a lot to do from the with taste. You got to keep in mind that people are oriented. You ask somebody, hey, they might describe, come from dinner or whatever, and they say, oh, how was it? Oh, it was great. It tastes just great. It was wonderful. So they'll focus on taste, not nutrition. And that's where the problem comes. We have been socialized into believing that things should taste good. I mean, you literally can take human urine and sweeten it, and people will drink it, and say, "Oh boy, this is quite an enjoyable beverage."
Now, how do
So,
you know that?
well, I mean, look, there are certain drinks. I don't want to call them by name, but there are certain drinks that are sold in the store that look just like human urine, and have the same pH balance, literally, and
Wow.
people drink them. So, what I'm saying is that people are motivated by taste, not nutrition, and so they talk about what tastes good, not what's good for you. And so I think, I mean, clearly a person who would eat an apple and have an apple pie, he's going to claim that the apple pie tastes better. But the apple is better for you than the apple pie. So, and obviously the apple pie is made from apples, but it's everything else added to it. You create all kinds of things, in the concoction that we call an apple pie. And they no, don't get me wrong, apple pies can be made naturally, but I'm saying the traditional apple pie that people buy is not something that's going to be useful to the body. It tastes good, but it's not good for you. And so that's the transition that people have to make, is have to decide on whether or not things are good for them or whether they're just simply, taste good. And that's where I made the transition, was that much of my food tastes wonderful. And so I'm not saying that nutritional foods don't taste good. I'm just simply saying that people are much more apt to smell barbecue chicken and think, oh boy, the smell of it is just wonderful, versus eating tofu. And so, one is good for you and the other one's going to be filling, taste good, smell good, it's festive, and they'll just go ahead and do it. The other thing is that you don't see the problem until later in life. So you can eat, all this stuff, at 20, and you won't really experiencing any problems maybe until you're 40 years old, 50 years old. So that's where the problem comes. We have this long time frame under which a person can do really, really bad things. And then the result won't happen until years later. It's not like a person who's, maybe hung up on maybe some kind of drug that they could take too much of it and overdose. You can't overdose on eating ham hocks and pork chops. I mean, you don't get an immediate overdose. It happens later in life, and that's where people a lot of times don't see the destruction to their body at 20 that exacerbates itself, 20, 15, 20 years later. And it's almost like what we do with education. We have to be able to convince people that if you get your education while you're young, it's going to help you when you're older. And people, and that's why you see a lot of people who can go to school, 12 years of elementary, post, elementary all the way through to high school. That's 12 years of education, and then go on to college. And, they, versus somebody who just say, well, I'm not going to do anything. It's just, it takes time in order for you to be able to have success. And the same thing applies to nutrition. Time eating the wrong things will give you no success in the future, but you can't see it.
Right.
Someone have to be able to convince you of it, and you have to be able to feel like, hey, what you did at 20 is going to affect what happens to you at 40.
You know what? And that reminds me of something that I recently experienced, and that was I took a what was that? It was a food food tolerance or food intolerance blood test. I can't remember if it was, but the whole point was um, that sometimes, we call it food, that if we are allergic to something, a food allergy, we think we're supposed to have an overall effect that we see, that's something that's bad for us. But over time, we could have an intolerance to something, but our body still will work with whatever we put in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I was told by the results of a blood test that I am that potatoes, that is something that I shouldn't consume. So I had long ago quit eating white potatoes, and then I went to sweet potatoes as a to take the place of that. And then it turns out sweet potatoes are not the best for me either. No potatoes. I shouldn't eat potatoes. And although my body will digest it, the doctor said over time, like your liver is having a hard time digesting certain things, potatoes being one of them. And so it's just going to tax my liver if I continue to eat potatoes. She was like, you do what you want to, but I'm just letting you know, based on your blood work, your intolerance, and it's going to eventually, get worse for you and your liver. So I made the decision to not eat potatoes. Now, that's not to say, this will be my first holiday season coming up, and I love sweet potatoes, like you said, sweet potato pie. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay away from that sweet potato pie. I might want to eat a piece or two, but I won't eat as much as
Right, right.
because I know.
Well, a lot of times, like I said, we do have medical doctors who do tell us a lot of different things, and no, I'm wrong. I'm a scientist. I believe in science, but I also believe in, the ability of the body to be able to handle a number of things with vegetables and fruits and all of that. Remember, when a person talks about, sit with a person, some maybe the dinner or lunch will come up and they say, oh, wow, you had lunch. What do you have? Well, they can only name you 3 or 4 things. They'll, first they'll say, I had chicken, or I had beef, or I had, some type of, poultry, other type of poultry product, or, or they, and they can't go any further. But if somebody asks me what I've consumed, for lunch or dinner, or, I can name, 2 or 3 dozen, multiple, hundreds of different combinations of beans and vegetables and fruit and things of that nature. So what I'm saying is that we limit ourselves in terms of when we're consuming meatless products. But when a doctor says there are certain vegetables that you can't consume, or they recommend that you don't consume it. Just understand that there are so many other alternatives to that particular one that they think or that they say may be questionable for you. Because you hear them talk about blood types, but all I do know is that everyone on this planet has to have two atoms of hydrogen and oxygen to exist on the planet, and that no matter what they say or what they do or what they're intolerant of, you have to have two atoms of hydrogen and oxygen, which is called water, and that the makeup of your blood requires minerals and vitamins and things of that nature. And if for some reason or others, they determine that starch content in potatoes is too dramatic for your bloodstream, then there are so many other things that you can get those nutrients from. And that's why the vegetable, are so compatible with the body versus, eating those other different items.
Right, because veggies are made of water, and
Mm-hmm.
so that agrees with our system. And that reminds me to let everyone know you're not a doctor, neither am I, but we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
things that we have experienced for ourselves, and that works for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so in this country, a lot of people, it was a few years ago, maybe a few months ago, when someone mentioned in Texas, or they mentioned that the country consumers, that Americans should stop eating so much meat, to
Mm-hmm.
start to reduce the amount of meat that they consume. And politicians went crazy saying that, no, you can't do that. You can't stop eating meat. What's wrong with y'all? That's un-American. They just
Yeah.
went crazy because
Yeah,
people.
and they were talking about it, because of the economics of it. You try to remember, when you really think about it in the context of what when people talk about eating a meatless sort of lifestyle. And again, I don't focus just on meat, because I focus on drinking pure water, making sure that you don't have aluminum based deodorants, and that you put the right stuff in your hair, that you're not, putting the wrong products, that you're not using artificial flavors and colors. But if we just focus on the meat part of it, since you brought that up, the issue really comes down to how much destruction it is to the environment that we live in. We hear this, global warming. And if you believe in science, all you have to do is just think of two or three things. We have a finite universe. When we start talking about matter, it is finite within this globe that we call the Earth. And so when you look at the amount of water that, say, a cow takes, roughly 2,000 or 3,000 gallons of water to be able to get you 1 pound of beef protein. It takes 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of water. Water is in short supply, particularly clean water. And people say, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Well, yeah, because the animal is a live animal, and he has to be domesticated for a period of time. In other words, allow him to be born, grow. You feed him water, and then the grain that he eats. I'm using the word he, could be a he or she. The grain that the animal consumes, you have to water the fields in order to raise the grain for that animal to be able to eat the grain. So here it is, a big old cow who comes into the world at maybe 80 pounds. He needs to be 300 pounds before you take him to the slaughter and kill him and sell him as steaks. During the course of that time, like I say, he's consumed 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of water just to get you 1 pound of beef protein. So my contention is that to save the planet, eat what the cow eats rather than eating after the cow has consumed it. So you're getting all your protein second-handed, and you're contributing to the global warming and the global destruction of the environment. So nothing wrong with eating what the cow eats. The cow is a vegetarian creature. It doesn't go around chasing sheep and goats and stuff like that, it eats grain. So you can eat the same grain and you eliminate the destruction to the environment. And so that's why, if you look at it from that standpoint, I recommend that people ought to consider that when they're thinking about their grandchildren and what they're going to be able to consume on the planet and how their earth is going to look. Sure, the beef smell good, it tastes good, and boy, it's easy to just take a hamburger, stick in your hand and bite it, and you see all the commercials, and bigger eat the biggest steak I can, a steak and a big swig of beer. It's all advertised in the mind to be able to associate it with festiveness. It's an enjoyable time. Grab a hot dog, grab a beer, enjoy a game, and you can do better. You can still enjoy all of the nice social attributes, but you can do it with a less destructive type of mannerism. Just remember, 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of water just to get 1 pound of beef protein. Just doesn't make sense, particularly in an environment that is so limited. We live in, like I said, we're in a limited environment, and the resources are scarce, and we have to be careful how we use these scarce resources that are on the planet.
And you know what, Martin? I saw a documentary the other day. Well, it was a few months ago, and it was, a lot of people feel like, and you can address this in a minute, but a lot of people feel like they must eat meat because it has protein and the protein helps them. And not to say that that's not true, but there are variations of how you can get those uh proteins. And the documentary that I was watching was about athletes, and with them doing so much training and sweating and needing muscles to perform. These athletes had decided against eating meat, so they were in the documentary, a part of the documentary, to prove that you don't have to eat meat in order to get protein. There were other ways of doing that,
Well,
and that they still were able to function. So if you could address that,
just think of one simple thing for a moment. Just think of one simple thing. The biggest animal in the jungle. We start talking about bigness, and we need protein because I have big muscles. The biggest animal in the jungle is an elephant. And where does the elephant get its protein? From killing tigers, from beating up whales, from eating giraffes? Is it chasing hyenas to be able to get its protein? No. The biggest animal in the jungle is an elephant, and it's a vegetarian creature. So that automatically is a contradiction to what we have been socialized to believe, that somehow we have to domesticate cows and chickens and hogs and pigs, kill them, let them eat the protein that we should be eating, then kill them, barbecue them in order for us to get our protein. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I can't rationalize. And I know we've seen, with the political scene, we've seen people just really stupid. They just believe anything. They still believe that, one man is still president.
Don't call people stupid.
Anyway, so that people have a belief structure that requires much more analysis. And if they just simply look at it, this one as it relates to meat, biggest animal in the jungle is an elephant. Where does it get its protein? The big animal right here in our domesticated world is the cow. Where does the cow get its protein? So if you eat these animals because you want protein, eat what they eat. That's all. That would be my recommendation. So.
True. And you know what? I joined the email list of the Food and Safety Network, the people who send out alerts when we have a food, a food recall, let's say that. And so it's turning out that, there are a lot of times when we think that, it's okay to eat this meat or this poultry or whatever it
Mhm.
is because it's approved, and it's been tested. But there are a lot of recalls that are going on that don't necessarily get a lot of traction in the media. They don't necessarily, and I don't know who makes the decision to tell us, don't eat lamb because it's been recalled, or a million
Mhm.
pounds of it was recalled. But I get the um, 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 uh, emails that talk about all the, and it's a daily email that talks
Mhm.
about all the different recalls, whether it's gloves that were sent that were supposed to be used in the hospital, and they're been
Mhm.
checked out to make sure they're fortified and
Mhm.
they're clean and all of that are going to hospitals. There's a recent recall of gloves. There's a recent recall of lamb meat, a recent recall of beef. So a lot of us, we're depending on the government structures to take care of, making sure things are consumable and safe
Mhm.
to consume. And it turns out there a lot of times, because it wasn't checked, or it passed through the check and it wasn't checked, that we end up saying, oh, this will be okay to eat. And because you think somebody else is taking care of it, when really we should be taking better care of ourselves and our diet, and doing better for ourselves and our children. And so that reminds me, you were the subject of an article that was in that your niece wrote about how you had positively affected her dietary habits. And so tell us about that. What was
Well, yeah,
that?
yeah. She writes freelance, and she was writing an article for Texas Monthly, and she happened to recall a story of, for years, I've been doing this. I used to be a little bit more adamant about trying to get people to follow the suggested dietary restrictions or dietary order that I have. But I've kind of gotten away from that and just kind of let people be themselves. And because it's like anything else, people want to be themselves. But at least they need to have the information. They need to be armed with the knowledge of what's going on. And so one of the things I told her that was kind of fun in the article was, the concept of eating an apple. It just recalled that, people, you constantly hear them say, well, an apple they keep the doctor away. And, people think that that's really kind of a misnomer, just a quote. But it really is something that's true. An apple, they could keep the doctor away because an apple really, if you crush an apple, if you just step on it or push it as tight as you could to the ground, all you're going to do is see, for the most part, mostly water, because it is almost made up about the same makeup as the human body. Roughly 70% water. Apple is roughly about that much, of water. So when you eat an apple, you basically balancing the way in which your body is put together. And so she was just, I mentioned to her how important it is that to eat the whole apple, the entire apple. Most people they'll eat around the apple. They'll take an apple and eat around it, and then throw the core away. Well, even the insects are more intelligent than humans, because the first thing the insects do, they bore to the core. You get an apple sometime, you'll discover you'll be eating the apple, and then if you eat around it, you'll be out eating it, and you eventually get to the core. If you cut it, you discover that the core has already been compromised, meaning that the insects have already gotten to it, because they know that's the most important part of the fruit, is that core. And so when you eat the apple, you eat across it, so that there is no core. If you're eating across the apple, you won't even have a core, technically, because all of you eating the apple in a consistent manner. And so part of the core is going, as you go through the various bites, you're going to eliminate the core. But if you eat around the apple and the only thing left is the core, then you're likely to feel like, oh, well, I don't want to eat this and I'm going to throw it away. So it was that thing that I was telling her about, when they were young, that even when you begin to start thinking about nutrition, you have to think about it in an orderly manner. That if you throw an apple out there to a cow, it's not going to eat around it. It's going to take the whole apple and eat it. And then ultimately, you're going to eat the cow. So my thought is that, you just, and so in this article, we chatted about how important it is to think about a nutrition process for you. It's cheaper to be a vegetarian. It's healthier to be a vegetarian. It's safer. When you mentioned about recalls, sure, there have been certain recalls from various vegetables that have been processed sometime in the wrong place. But for the most part, if you go out and grab a tomato off the vine, it's not going to, it's not, you're not having a problem. But sometimes in the case of having to prepare for mass distribution, things can happen. It's better for the environment. This whole notion of being and then in my estimation, it's much tastier. I think an apple tastes much better than an apple pie if you get in the habit of eating a very good apple. So those are the things that I was suggesting to her in the course of the article and in the course of what we've been saying to people all along, is that if you believe in the environment and you believe that you're in a world that requires attention and maintenance, then you ought to consider what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. How are you affecting? There's no different than me turning all the lights off in the house that I'm not using. That if I can think about, and then when I think about recycling, I think about reuse before recycling. How many times can I reuse this? Why am I eating on paper plates at home when I can eat on dishes that I can wash? So it's just all the things that we need to think about in the context of what we're doing. We start talking about, vegetarianism or eating and lifestyles. And that's the only thing that I've been suggesting that. And then it also helps us, I think, in our emotional state, that you're more comfortable with yourself when you feel that you are at the right weight in the right order. And when you're consuming a lot of these, what we call animal flesh, they have a tendency to force the body to be much bigger than what it should be. People use the term obesity, and essentially, you actually just overconsume. And so now, like with a car, if you fill up a gas tank, the gas tank will get to a certain point. If it holds 20 gallons, it's not going to hold anymore. It's going to run out. So you can only fill a gas tank with the 20 gallons or the limit under which to tank. But with the humans,
Martin, are you hearing me? Because your video is frozen. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, so your video is frozen. So while we're trying to get you unfrozen, I'm going to give it a few minutes. So I just want to ask you about and talk to you about our trip that we took to Yosemite National Park. It was a few years ago, of course. So I'm trying to give your video a few minutes to get unfrozen. So that's why I'm gonna go into length about this. But essentially, I wanted to ask you about your fitness regimen. A lot of people, they think that being healthy is just about one thing, like, eating right, or I go to the gym a lot, but I eat pizza every day, so I can eat pizza every day. I'm going to go to the gym a lot. But there are a lot of things that make up, it's like a tripod of health. So talk to us about what you do to stay healthy other than your dietary needs. And then we can talk a little bit about our recent trip and how we went hiking together. And then we don't want to hold you long, but then we can close up. So I think you're still.
Yeah. So I just think, from a health standpoint, it's really, really important, to be able to have a balance in terms of what you consume, as well as the kind of physical effort that you make. For me, I'm a avid bicyclist. I've always been a runner, but as I gotten older, I swim, try to swim 5, 6, 700 meters in the pool. And then on days when I'm not in the pool, I go to the hot sauna as well as the dry sauna and stay, 30 or 40 minutes, because you're still getting the aerobic effect of the body. The body needs to sweat every day in order to be able to get rid of all the microtoxins and stuff like that. So, and then, at home, you don't have to have access to a gym or have to pay the big memberships. You can do your push ups, your sit ups. You can get you a jump rope, the old fashioned side straddle hop, as we used to call it, jumping jacks, some people call them. All of those things. And then you do, three sets of tens.
Hold on, Martin. Hold on. Let's go back. You said jumping jacks used to be called what now?
It used to be called what they call a side straddle hop. So you back side straddle and then hop because you're having the hop.
Okay, so jumping jack was not the original
No, that
name.
wasn't the original name.
Huh.
The original name for jumping jack was side straddle hop.
Okay, and when did that change and why? Do you know?
Some of you youngsters probably changed it.
Okay.
Some of you youngsters, y'all just discovering sliding family stones.
Your video is still frozen, but your audio is clear, which is weird. But at any
Right.
rate, it went
Well, and
everything
as I
that
was
it
saying,
went.
like I was saying, I was just ending with the concept of as you get older, you change, and so instead of running, 3 to 6 miles like I used to run on hard surfaces, now I'm cycling, and I average about 100 miles a week.
Wow.
Try to cycle about 30, 35 miles every other day. And, and that really keep you with the level of fitness that you need, because, all I need is water and some corn on the cob or, some red beans or whatever it takes. And I'm able to do the same thing that I've been able to do, for the last 40 or 50 years of my life. I mean, I used to run around Bachman Lake there in Dallas. Me and a bunch of friends of mine, we'd go out and we'd run, 12, 15 minutes around Bachman. Now I can run around Bachman. It may take 20 minutes, but I'm still able to run around Bachman. But instead of running around Bachman, I'm biking around places like Bachman Lake, So if I used to run one time, I can bike around it 3 times and get the same kind of cardio effect that I need in order to be able to sustain. None of us going to live forever. But
Oh,
the whole, but the focus is to be able to live and not just exist. That you've got other
amen.
people organs that you've got people fighting for other folks' organs when they should take care of their own organs. Don't get me wrong, you can have an accident or a meteorite could fall out of the sky and hit you on the head or anything. But you should never self-inflict yourself with pain and punishment and a destructive lifestyle that potentially can lessen your time on the earth. And like I say, there's nobody have an infinite supply on time, but the way in which we use the time that we have should be for an orderly way in which we maintain the body in an orderly manner. And so if you do that, you're going to be able to, hang in there and be able to I call it living rather than existing. Some people work all their early years making a lot of money and then spend the last 20 years of their life using the money to maintain their health that they gave away. When they were making the money, doing all kinds of crazy things. Maybe
Right.
now they're older and they're using the money to try to sustain their life. When in fact it should be a combination. You know, do everything you can now to sustain yourself, and as you get older and you have the resources, you can even do more.
Well, Martin, I appreciate your being here and talking to us about your personal journey. And hopefully, we will someone will see this and know that it's not something that they have to jump into all at once. You can gradually work your way towards being less dependent on meat, the meat supply. You can start eating more vegetables, eating more fruit, doing more drinking of water, and biking and swimming and exercising. It doesn't have to be done all at once. So that's the main thing that I want to share with them. And thank you again. for being a part of the program, Martin. And normally at this time, I ask people if someone wants to contact you, how can they do that? And they have a Twitter account and they have a Facebook account and they tell them all these things, but you have no social media, huh?
Right. I don't have a social media presence. I don't think nobody's interested in me telling them what I had for dinner last night or sending pictures of all of this. So I don't need the social media. I use email and things of that nature. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a dinosaur. I use all of the, I know how to use the media for investing and financial planning and all that, but I don't need it for social contact. So if anybody want to reach me, they certainly can email me. And Steffanie, you can provide them my email address and phone number for those who would not be making calls from telemarketers.
So if you want to, let me see, we have someone who has, so we have randomly Oni C. Is that great information? I think that's your daughter, Oni C, randomly Oni C. I don't know if you would know her YouTube page name
Okay.
or not, but that is, I think that's your daughter. And then Ojari Burrell says awesome uh, information. So we have a few people on, and just in case someone has missed this or you want to share it with someone later, I'll repost this on my Facebook page. And Martin, I'll send you the link as well so you can share
Okay.
it with people. And that's it, because you're still frozen. So I am going to end this video. But thanks again, Martin,
Right.
for being a part of the program.
Oh, and
And
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate sharing a point of view with your audience. Thank you.
thank you, and you have a super day. Alrighty, audience. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, subscribers. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. It's at EUR Web for more information. Typing that in. Just want to make sure I spelled it right. I should have done that before I hit send, but at any rate, it's right. So to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thanks, and have a super day.